my rant for today is for the music business educators. I follow a lot of y'all. I see what y'all post, and I feel like a lot of times the interest is more so in trying to write something that will get a lot of engagement as opposed to something that's like really right? Like this
because it's monetized now. Speaking of lawyers, Russ, I don't believe Russ is a lawyer, but he was litigating on Twitter about a lot of opinions, and I'm curious to know where the two of you fall on this, because I feel like some of the stuff Russ was saying was stuff that Dame had been saying. Like the thing that I think catalyzed this whole conversation was Russ tweeting something to the effect of artists are mad that they have to put a cell phone on themselves and record a 15-second clip. And people were mad at Russ. They're like, I can't believe that you would agree with this. Music is so devalued. Now we got to make TikTok videos. This is ridiculous. And Russ is like, it's a 15-second clip.
Yeah. So it started with Russ tweeted, artists complaining about having to make a 15-second clip with their iPhone to promote their song are so entitled. It's easier than ever to get your music heard and seen. You don't have to spend thousands on music videos, radio, etc. And y'all bitch and moan about taking a selfish video. We get it. You don't want it that bad.
This sounds like Dame. This sounds...
And then somebody replied, them 15-second selfie videos don't work for everyone though. That like if it was as simple as making a video lip syncing your track, I'm pretty sure a lot of us would be on. And then it goes, and then somebody else would say, everyone ain't from Atlanta, New York, LA. Keep that in mind. Russ says, well, your music has to be great. That is an understood disclaimer to all my advice. The problem is that no artist thinks their music is the problem. So even having that convo is useless. Also, a lot of people are on because it is that simple. Once your music is great, and then it just keeps going. Yeah, I'm rocking with Russ on this one. For sure. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you're competing amongst millions and millions of people around the world that want the same attention you want. And, if you're complaining about being consistent, sometimes a lot of times this career just isn't for you. So I would advise you to find another passion and, maybe just continue doing music as a hobby. Cause I'm definitely rocking with Russ on this one for sure.
Well, did you see the subsequent conversations?
It went on for a while. Which one are you talking about?
Okay, so I guess it became, here's the thing with these conversations, and this is why the Spotify conversation isn't necessarily grounded in logic or rational thought, or any conversation regarding the music business. It's not grounded in logic or rational thought. I even had this conversation about show order with my nonprofit the other day, where someone said, hey, that show order makes too much sense. The artists are going to have a problem with it. And I'm like, I'll be goddamned if that's not the truth. Order? Like, who's going to perform in what order? And how do we make it so that no one's upset? Someone's always going to be upset. And they might be upset for the same reason that they're saying they wouldn't be upset if the show order were different. So there's very little logic involved in a lot of these arguments. With regards to this Russ conversation, it became more of a personal insult to a lot of the rappers who were saying that they don't want to take a selfie video to promote their single. Why? I don't know why, because a selfie video is a hell of a lot easier than what we used to do, which was being in the streets and going trying to converse with people, trying to convince. And like, I may have made $50 a night doing that, but I'm in the street for what, 5 hours doing that, and I sell one CD at $10 per hour, sometimes more, sometimes less. A selfie video isn't going to take that much time. Why psychologically is it so much harder for artists to figure that out? And I'm not blaming them. I'm not I'm not vilifying them for that, because sometimes, you know, I'll get an influencer deal and it's like, you know, make this 2-minute video and we'll pay you $500 or something. I'm just like, damn, I'm gonna do everything in my power to procrastinate on that one thing. And if I had to explain it to someone, they would give me a look. They would give me the look Dame's giving me, because I'm like, man, I got to do the lighting, I got to edit it, it's gonna take me a half an hour. Making a song takes way longer than that. So why is it so? And the difference between me and the artists that are arguing with Russ is I'm acknowledging that it's not logical, but it still bothers me a little for some reason. However, I'm not dying on that hill, and I don't take offense. When someone's like, you got to promote, I'm like, I know, I do. I really do. I do a lot of stuff that I don't want to do because I know it's going to benefit me. Why are other artists dying on this hill? Because the conversations with Russ got weird. Like, you're talking to a rapper that you probably love, and those conversations got weird.
My mom always says a hit dog will always holler. You know, so it's like, you're only upset because it's you. Pain, I'm with you. I hate making content. It's like, there's so many better things to do. I don't like the way that it looks, whatever. So like, podcasting makes it a little bit easier because I don't have to go out and make it. But at the same time, it's like, I had this conversation with y'all end of 2022. I shut down the Excellence Academy because I realized I didn't have enough social currency. A big portion of that was I didn't have enough content online, right? I think about the type of bookings that I get now, I think are a direct result of me having exorbitantly more content on my page than I did last year. I think last year I might have posted 7 or 8 videos on my page. Now I try to do once or twice a week. So sometimes I don't hit it, but I'm killing the monthly, right? So I cool. You don't like content, join the club. The issue is that this is the easiest time in the history of man to reach people with your product. If you are complaining about how easy it is, just go do something else. This is where I sit squarely with Dame. Like, get out of here. In the time that you argued, my hope is that at least you turned your argument with Russ into screenshots and then you posted it on your page for other independent artists to rally around you. At least now use that as content. But if you're more interested in spending hours complaining to your favorite artist, like you said, then I think it's a pointless thing. This is why I feel like the Spotify thing merges. Though I do feel like it's an ethics issue, I also feel like anybody who's saying, I'm going to boycott Spotify, yada, 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 I feel like is misplaced energy. If you are more interested in arguing or being frustrated about the reality of what things are, then you're wasting your time when you could be outside performing or shooting content or talking to people about a strategy. If you hate it so much, find another strategy that helps you. I hate content enough to where I didn't emphasize. It's still not my biggest emphasis, but what I emphasized this year was being outside a lot more, right? So that gets me the same, actually more traction than content does a lot. But when people meet me and then they go to socials and they see that it all aligns, then I get what I want, right? So it's like, I don't want to be the social media person. I'm not interested in having to keep up that lifestyle. So I'm not going to lean into that, but I'm not going to run away from it because it's the reality of the world. Like, you used to have to, I came up in the CD era. I was not in the vinyl era, but we used to have to, the minimum that we could run for CDs were 100 CDs. The minimum we could run for a jewel pack was 150 jewel packs. That joint used to be so annoying to me. So now you got 150 jewel packs, but you only got 100 CDs because you really can't afford, right? And then going to the studio and then the whole process, that shit was super expensive, right? And then after that, you have to pay somebody to shoot your music video. Then you have to chase down a person who shot your music video and hope that they give you at least the footage because they're not going to edit it, even though you paid them for it. And it's this whole, now you can pick up your iPhone, you can edit it on your iPhone, so I I think anybody who has more energy than I have right now to talk about it and to argue about it, anybody who has a comment for me or Dame about this specifically, go do something productive, because this is pointless. It's just the way of the world, and you have to live in it or find a way that you don't want to live in it. Go live in Utah and play in caves and bring people out to whatever. Either way, you're going to have to exert whatever you do in this industry. You're going to have to exert effort. So I think it's all really stupid, to be honest. This is one that I'm like, y'all are dumb as hell on this one.
We're gonna have to get Curtis King on this podcast too, because his reaction to the Spotify thing was, he said he was gonna take all his music off of Spotify.
He did.
Yeah, but he also told us that he was gonna leave YouTube, and he's back. He's been back for a while. So
he left YouTube for a little while. That's my brother.
Yeah, no, it's super cool.
But it's like leaving to go where? You don't have a place to go to bring you this type of revenue, so then you go back. Like, I get it, but it's pointless.
Everybody's using this as an opportunity to say, hey, you should have your own website, which you should, and you should go direct to fans, which you should. But yeah, we do need it. I think we should invite.
We should have. I don't even want to have that conversation about I do, but I'm going to get mad during it. This has nothing to do with Curtis King, but just the people who are always like, see, this is why we need our own platform. This is why we need our own website. You can't generate that kind of revenue off your own website unless you do infinitely more work. It's about the people who are saying it. If Curtis King is saying it, Curtis King is living it. If a bunch of anonymous people with 3 subscribers on YouTube are saying it, they're not living it. I'm sorry. And it's a frustrating conversation to have to explain the market and consumer behavior to people, where they're like, well, just take your music off Spotify and go over here. Why can't we just do that? It's like the Web3 thing. Like, people aren't in Web3 looking for music, just like people aren't randomly going to websites to listen to music. They want to know your artist name so they can go to their preferred streaming platform. Yeah. If millions and millions of consumers weren't at those platforms, we wouldn't need them. Right now, that's where the consumers are. That's the conversation we should be having.
My rant for today is for the music business educators. I follow a lot of y'all. I see what y'all post, and I feel like a lot of times the interest is more so in trying to write something that will get a lot of engagement, as opposed to something that's like really right? Like this,
because it's monetized now.
Yeah, it's getting wild. These music business educators are sometimes out of pocket. Like, they're getting, they might use like an outlier case to like.
I want to say educators. It's like shock jobs at this point.
They'll use like an outlier case to prove a point, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of these educators are always bashing streaming. They'll be like, oh, you should just sell a hoodie. Like, again, you should definitely be selling merch if that's something that you want to do and that you think you can do well and you have a community. But again, I'll show you artists that have a bunch of different business models and revenue mixes. It's not all one way. It's a lot of different ways to build a business, and selling a hoodie is not easy, especially if you want it to be recurring, right? The customer service has to be on point. The quality has to be on point. You guys act like selling shit is just the easiest thing to do, right? There's artists that have found that streaming is a lot easier for them to set up a merch operation, right? So it's not all one or the other, but some of these music business educators are getting a little bit out of pocket, and I'm so close to like calling some of them out, like, yo, but I'm cool with most, if not all of them, but they're getting a little bit more clout chasing. All their clout chasing tweets are just getting a little bit out of pocket. And it's not helping the independent music community at all. It's actually hurting it, because it's got artists even more confused than what they started off with. So
I was just thinking about this morning. It's because now Twitter, as well as Facebook, allows regular ass people to monetize their posts once they hit a certain threshold. So there are regular ass people who will hit a certain threshold on a post because the post is controversial or funny, and then they get monetized, and now their mentality has changed. Music business educators aren't exempt from that. They are now chasing numbers with their posts. So I'm seeing people go on Twitter, post racist shit, post weird stuff I don't even want to repeat, but I've seen it, and it goes viral because people respond to it, people argue against it, and they're just sitting there rubbing their palms together because their aim is to make money, not to inform, not to educate, and not to even say things that they fully believe. Because they know if it's a hot take or if it's a controversial take, it's going to get traction and they're going to generate some money. They might be making thousands of dollars a month pissing people off on Twitter. And so I'm seeing a lot of music educators who now have the blue check, or musicians who have the blue check now, and they're posting 10, 20 times a day. And I'm like, I see what you're doing, because you know 3 out of those 10 tweets are going to build up enough traction for you to make some money today. Now, what was hilarious to me in a tragic sense about the Russ exchange was suddenly a bunch of art, because they were taking offense to what Russ was saying. And the point becomes whether they're saying it explicitly, which they are, or if they're saying it implicitly, which a lot of people are as well. They're saying my music should be all I need. And you hear that narrative all the time. It's never been all you've needed. Even if you had great talent, undeniable talent, all the talent in the world, how do you monetize that? Traditionally, a label would step in and buy your masters, and they do all the work. And so you have this perception that, oh, I just sit back and coast on my talent. You're not coasting on shit. The label is taking the majority of what you're making, pocketing that, because they're doing all the work. And then people have a problem with that, but they want to have it both ways. They want to coast on their talent, and then the people who are actually making the moves to make them the money, they don't want to pay them. Because it's my talent. How do you monetize my talent? Well, because without these business people, without your team, you're not monetizing your talent. You're just a talented person playing music into the void. So there were a bunch of people who were offended about what Russ was saying, because they're like, well, my music should speak for itself. I shouldn't have to do this all the time. And I shouldn't even have to promote. I shouldn't even have to be on social media. It's all about numbers. We hate numbers. You should love numbers, because numbers correspond to people who care about your music. Once the numbers become actual humans, which they should, if you're looking at numbers disconnected from humanity, you've already lost, in my opinion. But once you look at those numbers, whether it's monthly listeners, whether it's followers, whether it's people who buy tickets and show up to your events, whether it's people who purchase merch, those should be comforting numbers. Those should be numbers that you appreciate, because these are actual humans putting their hard-earned money, putting their energy, putting their time into your life. And there were artists who were just sending Russ their music and being like, my shit is so amazing. How the fuck are you going to tell me I shouldn't be famous? How the fuck are you going to tell me that with the talent I have, I should have to make a 15-second selfie video? And I don't know what edible Russ had that day, but he was feeling very magnanimous and was taking the time to listen to people's music and give them feedback. And there was this one in particular. What do we know Russ as? We know Russ as the guy that produces his beats, writes his music, records himself, mixes and masters, and handles everything. That's Russ's entire brand. This dude sends him a song, and the song wasn't good. I'm not, like, when I say a song's not good, I'm very honest with people. When I say a song's not good, I'll tell you exactly why it's not good. The guy sang flat. The melodies weren't great. The mixing was terrible. The beat was uninspired. The sound selection was poor. I remember it. And you know, Russ was a little less detailed. He said, just listen to your pen music. It's not good enough. Keep working on your craft. The issue isn't your zip code, because a lot of people were saying, well, I'm from such and such a place. The guy got mad. He's like, but I do it all myself. How are you going to tell me? He said, bro, how are you going to tell me about what I'm doing wrong? And it's just like, Do you know who you're talking to?
He wanted Russ to listen to the song and be like, yo, bro, you know what? You may be right. Your music is super tight. And this is my thing. I tell people this all the time. I did a consultation yesterday. Somebody was like, can you listen to my new project? I said, it doesn't matter what I think about your music. It matters that you find your people. And that's what we're going to talk about, right? So it's like, it also doesn't matter that Russ didn't like Dude's song, but Dude is not willing to go find his people. He just wants to complain that people aren't finding him. And it's like, you got to go out. I think that's just the point of it.
Yeah, but also people have to be willing to take criticism. And I think the biggest hurdle for a lot of artists, producers included, is just not being good listeners. You know, every great writer that you hear says, in order to be a great writer, you have to be a great reader. And that doesn't just mean, okay, I read this book, give me another book. Okay, I read this book. It's about the way you read. It's about the way you're analyzing the prose in those particular books, and then how you're able to turn that input into great output. And with a lot of musicians, you know, if you're singing flat, you got to figure that out. You can't excuse that and say, well, I'm from Madison, we sing flat here. No, figure out how to not sing flat. Or like, I like my 909 snares. Well, they sound like shit in this beat. Yeah, but what are you talking about? It's just, I'm telling you very clearly, you have poor sound selection in your production. You asked me for advice and now you're arguing against it. So there's just this community, this contingent of artists who don't want feedback and aren't focused on improvement. What, you know, I forget, I heard this idiom a lot. You know, when we were growing up, we heard practice makes perfect. And then later on, we heard a revised version of that, perfect practice makes perfect. I don't like using the P word because perfection is a myth. But if you're not practicing in a way, if your idea of practice is just making more music and not learning anything in the process, or trying new things, or challenging yourself and taking feedback into account, then you're not really improving. I've seen people with terrible music 1 year, 5 years later, sometimes even 2 years later, suddenly they're making amazing music.
Some music just doesn't have an audience. I mean, that's just the reality. Sometimes it's finding your people, like Aaron said, but like some of this music just literally just doesn't have an audience, or an audience big enough to get your $3 from Spotify every year, right? Like it just doesn't. I just think it's important for you to have, you know, good people, good, knowledgeable people on your team that are willing to tell you the truth, that you respect enough to listen to. Artists need to listen to more people. I've seen artists get feedback from some of the most reputable people in the industry that have been kind of the behind the scenes people behind big songs, and artists still like don't listen to what they say. They don't take it. You know, they don't put that in the creativity process. And that's crazy to me. That's crazy. So if you're an artist listening to this and you're not open to feedback, you don't got to be open to everybody's feedback. At the end of the day, it's your song, but you should have knowledgeable people on your team or that you're connected to that you do listen to. A lot of times it is the music. I agree with Russ. Like the music is just not there, right? It's just not there. It's just not good enough to be attractive to a big enough audience for you to have a career in music. You know, and people, that's a tough thing to hear. That's a tough thing to hear, but like, you know, I didn't make music growing up, don't make music now. But if, you know, at some point when I played ball, like I just wasn't good enough to get to that next level. And that's just, it's tough, but it's just the reality of the situation. So what are you going to do?
And I do want to acknowledge that there are some outliers. Like there's this one artist that I love. She has 613 monthly listeners. Now, for a minute, she went on a run. Some of her songs, she had a song that hit 200K. She had another song that hit 70K, but she wasn't consistent. And she dropped a song a month for like 8 months, and they did all right. But after that, she took a break. She went to record and just started dropping music. And it's very much the like less than 1,000 streams. And I hate it because she's hella talented. She's same thing. She mixes, masters everything. She can sing, she can rap, super dope. Sometimes that just happens because it takes so much now to cut we're in an attention economy. So like there are some of y'all who probably do have sonically pleasing music, but you haven't found your audience. And I feel like that's also a reality of this industry that we can't circumvent because it takes a lot of things to break an artist, not just promoting on socials occasionally.
I think what a great opportunity to get that level of feedback, not just from Russ, but everybody that was involved in that conversation, because there were a lot of eyes on it. And you know, it's unfortunate that a lot of the people who had the temporary spotlight in that context squandered that opportunity. And, you know, I've seen people argue during live feedback sessions, and I'm just like, all right, man, don't listen to me. I didn't come here asking for you to give me your music so I could give you advice. You asked me to give you my advice, and everyone's going to have an opinion. It just so happens that my advice is going to be more specific than you asking your boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, what do you think of this song? And they're like, oh, you know, it's cool, it's hot. It's like, yeah, that's not helpful. Or like, you know, when I try to talk to my non-musical friends, they're like, yeah, you know, make the violins hit harder. It's like, what are you, man, this is why I don't ask you shit. So when you have that opportunity to talk to someone that can give you very specific feedback that's based on their actual experience and expertise, it's really valuable. But I understand not everyone can take it. Not everyone's ready. And again, I don't want to end this on a negative note. I've heard people with terrible advice and hard heads come back 5 years later and have amazing music, and they've changed their entire attitude, and now they're finding more success. They are the exception, though. Most people don't get to that point because I just think most people don't listen, and most people aren't self-directed in that way.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I was talking to DJ Head one time. DJ Head is at this point probably the most popular DJ in LA, outside of, you know, Big Boy. But he has a lot of influence here on the West Coast, does a lot of things. And like, if he's giving you advice and you're not listening, that's wild to me. Like, he's been DJing forever. You know, he's been part of some really big records. You know, he's super connected with a lot of the big artists on the West Coast and connected to a lot of these big songs. And you're just like not open to his advice. That's crazy. I mean, stuff like that's going to set you back years, and you might miss your window of opportunity just because, you know, just because you're not willing to accept feedback. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't have any patience for that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but here we are.
This started as a Dame rant about educators and then swung back to artists. So I feel like we kind of all ended on Dame's.
I'm still on
artists are tripping.
Yeah, I mean, artists are always tripping, but I'm still on these educators, man, because if a lot of you clout chasing music business educators, I'm super close to having to call you out either on this podcast or my own platforms, because the shit's getting ridiculous. You know, you started off with good intentions, hopefully, and you wanted to educate artists. Now you becoming just as clout chasey as any of these other
artists.
Yeah, the artists, like, y'all need to stop. The shit is getting ridiculous. So if you know if you're one of these people can see it. Like, you might be operating thinking, oh, people don't really know what I'm doing. Like, it's obvious, like, what you're doing.
I think it's worse than the artist because, you know, as an educator, we have more trust. And so when, you know, if any of us decided to just make stuff up, and that's why, you know, I did shout Curtis King out recently because he was one of the few people who, he had Arsonist on and he asked him about the numbers because a lot of other people with platforms, they'll look at an article, they'll report on the article. They won't question it. They don't go deeper than what's being said, or they'll hear a rumor and they'll just, you know, their entire content strategy for that week is soak up as much attention from this article or from this bit of news. Don't challenge it. Don't offer your insight. You know, like with the Juicy J thing, rap sales are 40% down. Okay, put the phone in front of your face and be like, yo, that's facts. Here's why. Collect all that monetization. Don't challenge it because that's not popular, because you got to think you have to challenge your own perceptions. Now you got to challenge your audience's perceptions. No, there's less money in that.
Yeah. It's so easy to kind of piggyback something that like existing frustration so that you add on to that. So my example is like a lot of times people are like, is it easier to sell 4 hoodies and make $200 or get X amount of streams that add up to that, right? Stop comparing streaming to merch sales. People should be doing both, right? But if you were to ask me, hey Dame, would you rather make $50 in streaming revenue this month or $200 in merch sales? I'm going to tell you I'd rather make $50 in streaming income, right? As long as that streaming income wasn't made just through playlist placements that are just going to get taken out and the money go away. Because most of the time, you know, the streaming revenue is built on community. Like your fans listen to that music. So that $50 is going to be very close to $50 next month. There's no guarantee that the people aren't going to need a hoodie next month, right? So I'd rather have $50 in streaming income because next month it's going to be close to $50. Next month it might be $49, $48. Next month after that. So basically, the value of that streaming income is way more than the $200 that you just got in merch. So stop comparing the two. It's two different things, and artists should be capitalizing on both. But because people are already frustrated with streaming rates, royalty rates, they like to do that comparison because it's going to get people are going to think, oh, that does make sense. And they're already frustrated. So they're going to like it, reshare it. But it's not the same. It's not apples to apples. It's apples and oranges for sure. Right. And so it's a lot of that stuff that these music business educators know, but they're just playing on the existing frustration of artists. So they're going to say it anyway, just to try to get likes and clicks. And that stuff needs to stop.
I agree. Let's end on that. It needs to stop. And don't stop suggesting show names for us. And I'm sorry if we're not using them. I'm like Russ right now. I'm gonna just say that not all of them are great, but we appreciate it. And look, that's not a knock on you. We haven't come up with any good names either, so we're all fucking up.
Only one podcast called Until Further Notice, and they use the acronym, and they have only put out 5 episodes, and it was in 2020. I Googled and looked on Apple Podcasts. So
okay, well let's see what we can. And the beautiful thing about that is we can use it unless we want to change it, and then like, well, it was Until Further Notice. It's like when Joe Budden called his podcast, I'll name this podcast later. And then finally just call it the Joe Budden podcast. I mean, eventually we can do Until Further Notice for a year and then eventually just call it the Payne, Damon, Aaron podcast. Whatever works. Well, you know who we are. You know we'll be back, same place, same time, right here next week on the MEC Until Further Notice Payne, Aaron, and Dame podcast.
Hey, let me say this. I'll be in LA this week. When this podcast comes out, Jump Global is having a conference. I'll be there. If you'll be at the Jump Global conference, please come see me. It should be great hangs. I'll be in LA till Wednesday. So let's hang out at the conference or at the hotel. But if you don't know where it's at, I'm not going to tell you because y'all don't need to know where I'm at. But if you're registered for the conference, come through. Let's hang out. I want to meet y'all.
Oh.
Yeah, I won't be anywhere. So I guess neither will Dame. Well, enjoy. Safe travels, Aaron. And we'll check in next week with another episode. Peace.